Okay, so I guess you can see my screen. I'm going to get started right away in the interest of time. So, firstly, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank IBEX and the organizers for this wonderfully curated event. I've been hearing some of the sessions over the past couple of days. Very impressed with the kind of content that I've been hearing. And over the next 10 odd minutes, I plan to introduce a very innovative and new technology which is called behavioral biometrics. Keeping in theme, keeping the theme of digital transformation, we strongly believe that behavioral biometrics will play a very, very key role in terms of helping banks and financial institutions along their digital transformation journey, with the two main use cases around reducing the customer friction as they interact with the applications, and also to reduce the fraud in the digital channels. So, I think this is very well clear now. We've been talking about this over the past couple of days that digital transformation is here to stay. And I think the Black Swan event of the pandemic has really, forced banks, financial institutions, and the industry at large to undergo a digital transformation journey, even if they were not very, even if they were a little laid back from that from that perspective. But I think we can rightly see it now. You've seen large public sector banks talk about it. We moved away from the traditional branch banking to online banking. We've heard about how there's a greater emphasis on mobile banking. For example, YONO from SBI, we've seen how big that is, like in excess of 30 million odd consumers who are, actively using the YONO platform. I think that's really, really huge numbers. I, for myself, use my mobile banking app now more than I use online banking to pay my bills and to do my regular payment transfers. It's become like commonplace for me. About the P2P transfers, I think this is for, I think India can be very proud in what it's achieved with the UPI platform from NPCI. At last count, I believe January, we had more than 2.2 billion transactions. That makes it really, really huge. And I think at the end of the day, any kind of device that has some computational power will be allowed, you'll be allowed to do banking from that. So I really think that the opportunity is kind of endless with digital transformation. However, with every opportunity comes some challenges. So I think the main challenge we are seeing or will see will be around digital identity challenges. And let me kind of break this down into three separate buckets. Firstly, is from the perspective of convenience, right? So we all know this, that when we want to log on and we want to do certain transactions, especially the millennials, we want to do it in a jiffy, right? And we don't want to be bogged down by multiple hurdles like entering passwords, one-time passwords, and the like. So convenience plays a very important role, and consumers nowadays are very finicky. And it's a fact that if a customer finds your solution inconvenient, he would even move to another. There's a lot of friction, he would move to another solution. And case in point would be NPCI, for example. Again, they've come out with a hackathon, and they're looking at how they can kind of an alternative mechanism to the UPI PIN, which is mandatory for all transactions as of now. Second, and most important, I think I've heard some of the sessions before this, is the criminal activity. The fraudsters are licking their lips with the kind of frauds that they can actually do now, with more and more people going online and trying to do digital transactions. We've seen kind of movies on it like Jamtara, etc. And this is real and happening, right? The social engineering kind of voice scams, etc. are still happening in a big way. And there are different other fraud MOs that I'll talk about some of them in my session. And lastly is obviously compliance. I think RBI and NPCI and IRDA and all the other regulators have done a fairly decent job in terms of coming up with compliance regulations to keep everyone in check. And again, a case in point would be what came out last week from RBI, are very, very comprehensive controls or guidelines around digital payments. And I think this will go a long way in strengthening the confidence that consumers have in the payments industry and the banking industry in general. Okay, sorry, I missed one slide. Yeah, so on the security side, I think, people who've been in the industry as long as I have, over 2 decades, will understand very clearly how the kind of cat and mouse game happens, right? You have these kind of different threat vectors, as we call them, like phishing attacks, using IP spoofing, Trojans, and it's constantly evolving, right? And so are the different tools that are now coming in place that are required to be able to counter these kind of attacks. Now, what you will see is that this current mechanism of having to deploy a point solution every time a new threat vector comes up is not sustainable in the long run, right? And that's where we strongly believe a innovative and a new age technology like behavioral biometrics, which actually looks at the behavior of the person as he interacts with the device or applications, irrespective of the kind of threat vector underlying it, be it a malware or be it a bot attack or be it a voice scam, irrespective of the kind of threat vector, the behavior is different, and that's what behavioral biometrics as a science is able to capture the change in the user behavior and give you the necessary risk signals and the inputs for your fraud management system to fire on. And that's what this topic is all about. So what is behavioral biometrics and how do we kind of build a model around it? So this is, as I said, an evolving technology, though there are a number of banks globally that have deployed this. So what happens is that at the base layer, data is collected from different input devices. So it would be like your keystroke movements, your mouse activity, your touchscreen behavior, mobile device movement, because there are a lot of signals that come from here which are captured. Now, what's interesting is what is done with that data, right? So two things. Firstly is to build a behavioral profile based on the data capturing, because everyone has a unique behavioral profile as they interact with devices or applications. And I was surprised to know when I first heard about it, but it's a fact. So things like your hand-eye coordination, your navigation patterns, how you hold the phone, how you swipe, are you holding it with two hands, etc., etc. So a fairly decent behavioral profile is built within a very few sessions. That's on the behavioral user profiling part. The other one, and I think this is really important, is a cognitive analysis, because the way a human being subconsciously interacts with the device or application as a genuine user versus how a fraudulent user typically does it is completely different. And that's exactly what, using AI and ML technology is with the data that's passed through it. We are, able to come up with that kind of pattern analysis to figure out whether, there's a lot of copy paste elements. Is there entering data from long-term memory, short-term memory? Is there segmented typing happening? And that gives a very, very good insight to figure out there is, a fraudulent, user behavior in motion over here. And that goes into building at the tip of the pyramid is what we call the behavioral insights. So you get, one insight into what's happening in that session. If you feel that the user is under duress, because under voice scam, you're under duress, you're being pressurized to do something. Is there some distraction? Is there some timing anomalies? So a lot of these insights are then shared with the, the financial institution or the bank for it to be able to take a more, a more comprehensive call on what's happening as far as that session is concerned, and then accordingly, take corrective action. So that's the basic fundamentals of behavioral biometrics. And how do we do it? This technology, like I said, would give the end goal of being able to continuously protect a user as is in your digital session, give you those actionable insights, like I told you a little while ago, as well as most importantly is give you that frictionless experience, because you do not want the customer to do anything, the end user. He should just interact with the device or the application the way he normally does, and based on the risk score that is being transparently being monitored or is being profiled, you're then taking the necessary action. So it's not like a one size fits all kind of risk profile which you're giving to that particular consumer. How does it happen? Very simple three-step process. First, you collect the data, and that's through very simple JavaScripts or SDKs which need to be embedded into the target system, so across your banking application or your banking web pages, and it transparently, seamlessly collects this behavioral, completely anonymized behavioral information. Like I talked about the mouse movements, etc. About 2,000 different data attributes are in fact collected, so it's pretty rich. Then comes the power of AI and ML, where there are risk models that have been built, especially to be able to figure out, mouse clicks, how he's holding the phone, hand-eye coordination. That kind of data is crunched, and the power of AI and ML allows us to come back, in real time with what's really happening in the session. It's not just the behavior attributes what I talked about. It's also the cognitive attributes, right? What his preferences are and subconsciously how he's behaving. And the last part is after you get that information, you generate a risk score and with the risk indicators, and this kind of feeds into either a fraud risk management system available to the bank. So it complements an existing fraud risk management solution, not asking them to do away with it, but it gives you that additional fraud uplift. And at the same time, you can build your own policies, and there are a number of tools around it for you to better utilize this technology specific to your bank's needs. Now you may ask, okay, that's good, that's behavioral biometrics, but what are the fraud use cases? How are banks using it, or how do you propose banks to use it? We again come up with three main fraud use cases, and I think this is pretty common. We all know about it. Account origination. Firstly, where you have these different mechanisms like loan origination or personal, credit cards or even CASA accounts, etc. We've got different tools in place. I'm not denying that now to be able to open an account digitally, and you've got onboarding tools. But from a fraud management perspective, this would add that additional fraud uplift because you'll be able to figure out by the way he's entering his account information whether he's genuine or fraudulent, and thereby you can reduce the friction in that process. At the same time, catch higher amount of users who are using stolen identities or synthetic identities to try to do fraud. Account takeover, I think this is pretty common nowadays, where your identity is stolen either through the gray dark web or through social media or using emulators, bots, and whatnot. So account takeover fraud also is prevalent. And like I talked about earlier, the way a fraudulent user, a fraudster would work through your account, move through the pages would be different from how a genuine user does it. And that's a behavioral biometric, irrespective of the underlying threat vector, can come in and detect that this is an ATO or account takeover fraud. And lastly is the new age scams that we're seeing all the time, where you get a call and then you're told you have to do your KYC or you're getting a cashback, and you got to transfer funds or accept a collect request, and most people fall prey to this. Now, again, you must understand these are subtle changes in human behavior, but behavioral biometrics can detect these subtle changes that, that there is an active voice call, or, you're taking more time to do something, there's some hesitation, and give you a risk score and stop these kind of frauds in real time, which under traditional controls cannot be detected. So I really feel that behavioral biometrics is very powerful to kind of help, prevent these three different fraud use cases. I'm now reaching towards the end of my presentation, keeping it very short and sweet. So you might ask, okay, is this new age or is this being deployed? Fact of the matter that some really large financial institutions across the world are using this technology. From our perspective, it's like large names like American Express, Itaú in Brazil, RBS, and they're using it across the different fraud MOs, AO, ATO, and the voice scams that we've been talked about. And there are a lot of banks over here who are now evaluating this technology. This is my second last slide about Biocatch, in case you've not heard about us. So we are proud to be the pioneers and the leading providers of the behavioral biometrics technology. Israeli company with a big data science team based out of there. And the kind of numbers that we have, like 2 billion sessions analyzed each month, we are one of the biggest players in this space now. So last slide to wrap up. We strongly believe that behavioral biometrics will power the digital future. It's not just pure behavioral analytics on who, where and when, but how users interact with their device, which will have the strong customer impact of reducing losses while improving the customer experience. So thanks so much for once again for giving me this opportunity to speak with you all. I'm available on the email ID and phone numbers should you feel the need to reach out to me, or through the sponsors, and I'll be happy to work with you and your bank on your specific requirements. Thank you very much.